Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Washoe County Open Space and Regional Park Commission for Tuesday, May 1st, 2018. First item, roll call.
Nathan Daniel.
Doug Doolittle.
Carissa DeShiro.
Christopher Nenzel.
Thomas Gwynn.
Michael Arch from Washoe County District Attorney's Office.
Great. Nate, will you lead us in a pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is public comments. Item 3, and I have no public comments. Item 4, approval of the agenda for the Open Space and Regional Parks Commission meeting of May 1st, 2018.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 4, approval of, item 5, approval of the minutes for the Open Space Regional Parks Commission meeting of March 6, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes for both March 6th and April 3rd.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 6, acknowledgement and recognition of park operations staff for their outstanding service and contributions to Washoe County. Any recognition this month? None? We're moving right along. Item 7, recommendation to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners execute an indoor tennis facility development agreement between Washoe County and Indoor Tennis LLC, a Nevada limited liability company based on the unsolicited proposal for an indoor tennis facility and related improvements to be located at the Washoe County Golf Course property. Director.
Good afternoon. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. As you'll recall, 2 months ago now, I brought an item forward related to a proposal for an indoor tennis facility on the Washoe Golf property. There were some questions asked by you all, and I've outlined those within the staff report. Just for a reminder, curious whether the location chosen would interfere with the master plan of the golf course. I went back and looked at the latest edition of the master plan, and there's nothing scheduled in that little triangular area that would interfere with the master plan. Question is whether would interfere with the existing golf course operation. I did sit down last month with the operators of the golf course. We talked through kind of impacts, potential. There aren't a lot of impacts. They are concerned about potential liability issues, so we'll have to work through that. If you decide to move this forward to the Board of County Commissioners. They were a little confused about the layout. Obviously, it was a preliminary layout shown there. I think there's some things that can be done to move it around so it doesn't interfere with any of the golf operation. But again, it was really more the liability issue. If an errant golf ball hits the structure, who's responsible for that? So we'll work through that. Whether there are any deed restrictions on the property, and so in the staff report, I put the clause that's within the current deed for that property. Again, we do have 2 other golf courses operating on the same, tennis facilities operating on the same property. The deed restriction is pretty broad as far as requiring golf operations to occur. So golf operations will still be occurring. This is just an ancillary use along those lines. And then the last question, if this venture is unsuccessful, then what? I think we've covered that within the agreement for bonds and cash deposits, so that or letter of credit, bond or letter of credit to cover this facility for at least a year of operations, while we make sure that either we get to the point where we can take the use away from the property and not be out any money to the taxpayer, to the general fund, to even golf operations. So provided that information to you, provided a draft document, and awaiting for some direction.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Comments? Go ahead. Sorry.
I just had a quick question about So it looks like Washoe County would execute a ground lease to the tennis LLC and then would sublease the facility. I was confused about the lease back, why it was done that way.
So the reason it was done that way, we're following the provisions that we worked through for the Reno ICE, which is down at the South Valley's library. And this is a way that the district attorney's office has been able to craft the steps necessary to be able to have a not-for-profit operating on a Washoe County piece of property. So these are, more technical steps that need to occur. Essentially, it's a lease agreement, it's a ground lease, and then an operating agreement. Those are the three agreements that will eventually come out of this. That's like I say, it's a way to make sure that we do it all legally, given the parameters within the Nevada revised statutes.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One, I'm confused. Is this for-profit or nonprofit in terms of their LLC?
I might be able to have Mr. Richter come up and explain kind of the financial status of this group. So right now, as I understand, Tennis LLC is a for-profit corporation. We would have to lease, however, for the operation to a not-for-profit to make this work the way it goes. So I don't know if we want to bring Mr. Richter up to.
One more question to you first. We currently have leases on both golf courses. Would this lease be modeled similar to what those leases are in terms of compensation for use of the county property?
So the way that this lease is currently put together, this is a no-cost lease. So if you would like me to provide something different, this is currently set up similar to the way the Reno ICE lease was done. But yes, we do have two golf operations. Those are licenses, and there is a profit-sharing portion of those to Washoe County for the use of the county asset.
Okay. Personally, I feel there should be some compensation for the use of the property. I'm sure, and I'll let the proponents talk in a minute, but I'm sure there's fees that are going to be charged for the use of the facility, et cetera, and I don't know why the county would not want to share in that revenue source in some fashion, whether it be through a flat lease or through an arrangement similar to what the golf courses are. Any other comments? Okay, one last comment from me. It's been a while since we saw the plan. I forget the parking arrangement. Having been in that office over there for a while, parking can get really strained, especially during days when the high schools utilize those courts over there for their tennis matches. The university has at times, and it gets pretty crowded over there. And I know the nonprofits that are currently utilize the building, so they have parking needs as well. Is that being accommodated on the same parking layout that's there now, or is that on the site where the indoor tennis would be?
So the proposal actually has, there's the dirt section fenced into the south of the existing parking lot. So the proposal actually shows an expansion of parking into that area, so creation of additional parking.
Okay.
I remember when it came back to initially came here, there was, I requested the fence to be moved on the emergency turnaround. I think it was, I don't think they included the emergency turnaround as part of within the fence line. So it was a really weird configuration over there. Do you know if that's been modified?
So we haven't gotten to the point where we're actually talking about actual layout. This is really more conceptual of, is this appropriate use for this land? As we go through the land lease portion of this process, that will be included in that legal description that is created for that parcel. So I do have those notes noted on here. So when we get to that point, that will be included within that land lease portion.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I do have a public comment from Ken Crater. Oh, sorry.
Michael Large on behalf of the DA's office. I had a quick question for Mr. Solero. In regard to the power of this commission to hear this item, and I don't want to blindside you here, but I'm reading the powers of the commission, and I'm wondering in regard to encouraging public recreation, including the development of recreation and park facilities, and the aspect of this park commission to hear a for-profit business venture on park and open space property. Is this appropriately before this commission? Is there a public dedication of courts, time? What's the public recreation function of this if it's for a private industry?
So the discussions we've been having with the proponent is that there needs to be a public recreation portion in their project so that the public can come in and pay to use courts. They don't have to be members. They should be able to come in and pay to utilize the courts in an indoor fashion. So that's one of the reasons why this is coming to this body for a recommendation out of this body to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay. Mr. Crater?
Thank you. For the record, my name is Ken Crater, and I am representing Kurt Richter. I've been involved with this project from day one. And in fact, we've looked at, I think, a total of 3 different locations before zeroing in on this one, as well as looking at many other existing structures and facilities. And this one just, I think, turned out to be a win-win. But to address the couple questions quickly that have come from the commission, first of all, yes, there will be a large public component to this facility. Not just the fact that the whole general public will be able to play tennis here, but also Mr. Richter has been out actively engaging groups like the Boys and Girls Club to allow them to come play free of charge to try and build youth tennis. Because his goal with this facility is to really reestablish youth tennis in our community. It's been a long time since we've been competitive on a junior tennis or a high school level. And so the idea is by being able to broaden the ability for folks within this community to play year-round, we're going to be able to increase the skill sets and really improve our level of play in the Western United States and the United States. So that public component is just as important to Mr. Richter at the county to try and build that youth tennis component. And I think that's one of the reasons that, we've kind of talked to this point, there wouldn't actually be any compensation for the land because Mr. Richter is going to be investing around $1.7 million to make this happen. And with that public use component, I think that's a pretty good compensation to the community. And I hope you agree with that. Right now, he is a for-profit, but we are looking at potentially establishing an actual nonprofit to run this. There's pros and cons of either one. And I think that's yet to be cited, but to me, as long as he has that strong public component, I think that's the biggest issue on this. And then clearly we'll refine the layout based on some of the comments like the turnaround and the fencing, but it is our goal, obviously, to make sure this is a safe place to play. We know that we're gonna have to take on liability for errant tennis ball or golf balls. And we also know that the current tennis court gets golf balls rolling in there, and I'm sure Mr. Doolittle has seen a few of them through his career here working in Washoe County. So obviously placement of the fence is going to be critical. And then finally, as Mr. Solero stated, we will actually be adding parking spaces. We only need about 20 to 25 spaces for the actual courts. We're going to be adding 41. And this facility will just be a daytime facility, open around 9 a.m. and closing around 8 or 9 p.m. in the evening. So it won't be a 24-hour operation, but we will actually be improving the parking situation for the current facility by adding a significant more number than we need, because obviously we know how jammed up that parking lot gets during different events. That's all I have to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
You have a follow-up for Director Solero. We should not director now, but it's just about the way this is structured. So so can you enter into an agreement with a for-profit, or is this bylaw necessitates you work with a nonprofit?
So the way that this is set up, again, for the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager, the end result is going to result in a operational agreement with a not-for-profit entity to operate the tennis facility. The agreement and the land lease can be with a for-profit, and then the operating agreement is going to be with a not-for-profit.
Okay, thank you.
final comment from me, going back to the fee aspect of it, or the compensation for the use of the land. I personally have heartburn with having an agreement in place on that property with the golf operators and not looking at a similar agreement with a tennis operator or any other operator that may want to utilize land that the county owns. So that's just my thought, but I'd like, when you're going through the lease part of it, if you get to that point, I'd like that to be discussed.
I think I agree with that as well, especially in light of the fact that I know that there is a line of credit to cover the event of a default, but I mean, it's only for the period of 1 year, and it may not be likely that a default would occur within the first year. And so the county is taking on some level of risk that they're going to have to be able to have access to these funds to maintain the structure if the original entity was not able to do so. So that's my thought.
Any other comments? There is a recommendation from staff and a potential motion. Does anybody wish to place a motion on the board? None? Seeing no motion. We'll take it to the next step, I guess. And I don't know what that is, but legal counsel can weigh in on it.
My understanding, Michael Large on behalf of the DA's office, my understanding is this came through the unsolicited bid proposals, Mr. Solero?
Correct.
Then the next step would be for them to report this out, that there was no recommendation from this commission, and they can take this to the Board of County Commissioners and have it agendized in due course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Okay. Item 8, presentation and discussion on Washoe County Park Property 688 White First Street, Reno, APN 039222021, and possible recommendations, staff, and items related to the parcel, including but not limited to current and future use, improvements, development, and future planning.
Okay,
Colleen?
for
Go ahead.
the record, Colleen Wallace-Barnum, Parks Operations Superintendent. Good afternoon. So to summarize the staff report, we were here March 6th, and at that time, staff presented on items and issues related to the parcel, including the history of the acquisition, the current condition, improvements made by Mr. Stilley, and non-permitted use by Mr. and Mrs. Stilley. The Park Commission recommended to staff at that time, there were two options to go with. It was option 1, which is a recommendation to operate and manage the parcel consistent with other parks within the Washoe County Park System. And the resolution to the following issues would be brought back to the Open Space and Regional Park Commission for final recommendation, which is today. And that would be first an inventory and assessment of all improvements and recommendations for appropriateness. You will find that in Table 1 of the staff report. Second was a plan for the maintenance, operations and irrigation water supply, a signage plan, and then a plan for permitting of events and programs on the property. So Washoe County staff met with Mr. and Mrs. Stilley on March 27th to discuss the maintenance, irrigation, and continued use of the parcel. Mr. and Mrs. Stilley verbally proposed that they would continue to maintain and irrigate the landscaping if the county agreed to allow up to 20 events between mid-May through mid-October, and events would be permitted until 9 p.m. All the background information was really from our previous report. So since then, we actually did receive, Washoe County staff received 3 letters and numerous emails from residents, all of which had some serious concerns and complaints regarding Mr. and Mrs. Stilley's use of the property. The letters and emails indicated many of the same concerns and complaints, and just some highlight points was the constant late-night loud music and drums during spring, summer, and fall. Neighbors can't enjoy sitting outside due to noise levels. Neighbors have to shut their windows, due to noise. Intoxicated guests walking around and through the neighborhood. One neighborhood allegedly sold their home because of the noise. One long-term neighbor thought it was private property. And then finally, just concerns over their property values in general. Given that the parcel is really best characterized as a community park and does not have the same type of improvements and facilities that our regional park systems offer, so the amplified sound, the weddings and other large social functions wouldn't be permitted past park hours and would generally not even be permitted in Mayberry Park, which is adjacent to this parcel. So based on those numerous complaints received by the nearby residents, it was clear to staff that really permitting weddings and different types of social functions would not be an appropriate use of the parcel, and that the proposal would be if we allowed them to do 20 events, it would be essentially every weekend from mid-May through mid-October. So there were two different options presented before you today. And those options are, number one, which should Washoe County remain the property owner. Staff would recommend that the parcel continue to be operated and managed similar to other parks within the county park system. So weddings and social functions would not be permitted by Washoe County, and other requests for use by Mr. and Mrs. Stilley or others would be handled on a case-by-case basis. So if there was any other type of special event, for example, I think they came forward with a proposal for a kite festival, and that was something that seemed appropriate on that parcel, and we were moving forward with that. So then option two is given the ability and adequate public access to the river and park amenities in the vicinity, coupled with the challenges associated with the development of the use based on size, location, and layout of that parcel, that Washoe County could deem the property surplus and sell the property as allowed under NRS. So at this point, I don't know if you want to have further discussion on any of the options or any of the proposals that staff's brought forward.
Any comments, questions, Commissioner?
I think I made this comment last time. Did you ever approach the Regional Flood Commission about this?
They were not approached, no, not to my knowledge.
Commissioner?
So I have a couple questions. One is if the Stilleys stop maintaining the park, does the county have the resources and intent to go into that area and continue to maintain it as a park?
So probably the biggest hurdle we'd have to overcome is access to water. We'd have to probably get water. The water's not too far from the very eastern portion of the parking area of Mayberry Park. We'd have to actually, run water from that point to the parcel. So that would be probably the incurred cost of maintaining that facility at this point, would be water. That'd be the main issue.
So that would be like a capital improvement or something like that, somewhere down the line in the next 5 to 10 years or something like that?
It could be, if it's over $100,000, if it was under 100, we could do it in a different fashion through infrastructure preservation.
So chances are, if they stop maintaining it, it's going to deteriorate over the next few years, likely.
I think it depends on how much it would cost to get water to the facility. So once we find that out, we would be able to have a good idea of how much money we would need to put into it.
Mm-hmm. And then my second question and concern is that from reading all the supporting documents from last time, not necessarily in this report, not at all in this report, but in the previous reports, there were, pretty much, it's pretty clear to me that there was an intent that existed and an implicit understanding between the county and the Stilleys for the improvement and maintenance of the parcel. I think it's really too bad that nobody took the time to document that, and puts them in a really bad situation leverage-wise because they have nothing to show. But I'm pretty sure that, my feeling is the intent was there, that they maintain it and they could do their operations on it. And, staff changes, the institutional knowledge goes away, and intent changes for the county. So, but I think that we have some responsibility to realize that that was the intent previously, and then they were operating in good faith and things have changed. Mostly this came up because of the neighbors and the volume level that Stilleys operate, there. But I don't know, it just seems to me that the middle ground option here would be you'll let them continue to operate with what they propose, which is 20 events, permitted till 9, so they're not loud theoretically. And, then the park stays open. And the county, what I would like to see is then the county put signage in there consistent with Washoe County Parks. So it's clear that that is a county parcel that anybody can use. And people do use that right now. The general public goes in there all the time. I mean, that's what that's just my suggestion, and I would make a motion to that eventually if that's what we come to.
Commissioners, any other comments, questions? Yes.
Maybe I missed this too on the electrical. Would it be be the county's responsibility to bring it up to code?
So we would either request that be abandoned, that we wouldn't have electrical on the property. It's conduit coming up out of the ground. There is a plan for it that Mr. Silly did provide to us. So it would be our responsibility to either abandon it and decide we didn't need electrical on the property, and therefore it wouldn't be necessary to maintain
Great.
and/or permit.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Well, I'm just curious, without making the motion, I'm just curious what the commission thinks about that middle ground idea. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Large on behalf of the District Attorney's Office. I have several questions for staff in
Right.
regard to this, if I may.
Go ahead. I do too.
One of the things that struck me that was apparent from the staff report was some of the things that have been placed on the park property that are fundamentally not in accordance with what other parks, including the deck that is on the county parcel. Is that coded pursuant to Washoe County Code?
So our recommendation, thank you. So in Table 1, you've got basically a highlighted portion of improvements that are in yellow that were recommended that they either had safety issues or something needed to be addressed or changed. And that deck along the banks of the river is essentially in the floodplain, and we believe an NDEP permit would be needed to shore up the footings along the riverbank, which is no small process, but it's possible. But currently in its state, it's not, I don't believe it's in a safe condition for people to use.
The second issue that was the art installations that are out there, is there any other cases of Washoe County Parks, regional or otherwise, that have private art installations on them?
I wouldn't say private. We commissioned an artist years ago for Bartley Ranch, and there is a piece of art out at the Friendship Circle in front of the historic Huffaker School. So there's some existing art in that park. And I mean, it's accessible, so I wouldn't say it's not different entirely from what's on what's on the property right now.
The other issue is in terms of bathrooms. If there was going to be a host of events and facilities, my understanding pursuant to Washoe County Code and state law is that we're required to have them pursuant to our facility, not pursuant to a private facility. Am I incorrect in that? So
That's a
if
good
the
question.
Stillies are hosting a wedding, but using county property to do so, do our facilities have to be utilized?
We would have, I mean, in other, special activity agreements that we've done with various groups throughout different parks, we typically will require, trash removal, portable facilities, parking crew, there's whatever amenities may not be available, the group would be required to have on site.
The noise amplification systems that are being utilized, I know there were some pictures that were submitted today, and I really appreciate, and I know there's a lot of people here that want to speak publicly and should need to. But one of them shows that there are speakers being set up not only on the county park, but also setting up on the stage, which is partially on the county park. And my understanding is that amplified music in county parks is prohibited.
It is.
And that's all of our parks?
That is all of our parks. So what makes our regional parks unique for these types of events, weddings or social functions, that we typically have an indoor facility, and that's where we recommend the groups do their music is indoors so that it doesn't impact the remaining park users and that park users can still go about enjoying the park in the way they chose to when they arrived.
What's our closing times for our county, for Mayberry Park?
For Mayberry, it's dawn to dusk,
And obviously, that's the closest park to, this is part of Mayberry.
correct?
So night events would be prohibited in other parks?
Correct.
And, okay.
The only way we get around that, or groups can get around that, is if they present an option where they want to utilize the park. Sometimes it's before park hours. It's for runs and those types of things. They might need to get into the park at, 5 a.m. to start setting up for a run. And then there's times that we do allow it past park closing hours, but those are, that's through our special events or activities policy.
One of the issues that's come up and it's been brought to the district attorney's attention and by neighbors is in terms of code enforcement. Because of the location of the parcel, it's within the city of Reno, correct?
So it's a Washoe County parcel. I believe that if they contact 911, it would be, it's a good question. Sometimes we get, when we have these interjurisdictional boundaries, the city of Reno might show up, Washoe County Sheriff's Office might show up. So I don't know specifically. Does anybody?
Okay, that was a leading question.
Oh, okay.
That was the
I
leading
don't
area.
know.
I contacted the city of Reno's code enforcement, and I know that Cindy Gilblanco and Gina Leverson from the city of Reno are familiar with the noise complaints out there. But my question would be, if Mayberry Park, if there was a noise violation after hours in Mayberry Park, would it be controlled by the city of Reno or Washoe
It
County?
would be Washoe County Sheriff's Office.
So Washoe County would be the thing. Okay. So we're going to be responsible for any noise violations out there on Mayberry Park
I would
regardless?
say so, yes.
Okay.
So the noise complaint is challenging because we did talk with Mr. Stilley about this at our meeting on March 27th. And even if, let's just say, for example, the option one is chosen and we don't permit the events, he can still have events on his property and his parcel, which is just adjacent to that. So that would still have to be addressed through the city of Reno. But regardless, it's, what we do, it's the noise challenge is still potentially there.
Has there been any discussion in regard to creating a clear delineation between the property lines in terms of putting up a fence?
We haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
I think if we need to get there, we could potentially, but
I mean, I'm not channeling my inner Donald Trump of build a wall, but I'm just saying that it seems that there's a lot of property line issues there throughout that area.
yeah, it's the lines are definitely blurry.
Okay. But there's no access, the Stillies don't have any access to the river except through the county facility,
There
correct?
might be a very small sliver.
Okay. And there was nothing in the staff report in regard to the documentation from prior Parks Commission or Parks Department for the Stillies' continued use that you could find?
For example, if there was an agreement, a signed agreement, no, there was nothing on record that we could find.
That's all.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
I have a couple of questions. First and foremost, I'm concerned about consistent use throughout our park system. I think what rules we have in place are good rules, and they're there for a purpose and should be applied across the board to all similar parks. And as I understand it, the activity agreements in similar parks don't exist. You don't have the same kind of activity in similar community parks as you do or have had in this park in the past. Is that correct?
That is correct. So for example, an event that we regularly enter into, I wouldn't say an agreement, but we have a special activity well, it's a permit. It's for the, RTO, for the Reno Tahoe Odyssey. So they come in, but those are usually daytime events, and they come in and they utilize the trail systems, and we allow them to utilize the park for those types of functions.
And going back to what Commissioner Daniel was talking about, if the middle-of-the-road approach is one that's reviewed, you would then have to consider activities in that park from other applicants.
Correct.
Right? I mean, if you're going to allow it for one, you should allow it for all. So that would mean that the 20 events that Mr. Stille would like to have could be expanded by other individuals to 40 events. Is that correct?
Correct.
I mean, I can't see allowing for one and not allowing for others. And that's where I get back to the consistency issue in similar parks with similar rules. Ongoing maintenance, if the decision was made to enter into an agreement that provided the same use that in that park as you do have in other parks, and then you were to take on, you being the Parks Department, would take on the maintenance of that park on a full-time basis. Would you continue with the same structures, plantings, amenities that are currently in that park now?
So back to table 1, I believe that the landscaping improvements are all in good condition. The one thing we might do is not have turf. We might just remove the turf and then not have that water cost associated with the turf, and just have it be DG and an area that's, can be utilized. People can set up picnic chairs, or, sit on a blanket or whatnot. It's beautiful access to the river. It is a really pretty spot. And I think we would request that several of the items that are on there would be removed. The arbor wouldn't, several of those safety issues that I addressed in table 1.
And you would be able to manage that within the existing resources that you have?
I don't think, I think it would mostly be drip, and then just making sure we're keeping all those plants in living good condition.
Commissioner Daniel.
Well, the item before this was on a tennis center that was unsolicited that is likely to move ahead. So the idea that there aren't special arrangements from time to time with for-profit organizations, I mean, I think we just heard one that's very similar to this in some ways. So I don't think there's a lot of weight in that argument personally. Like, this is not a precedent. Maybe the tennis center is a precedent, but there's not, because there was also the ice rink. So, these things happen. So that's just one point. And again, like I said, I would make a motion for the middle of the road, but I'm curious what they're at. I have this sense that I'm not in the majority here, so yeah, I don't know.
Well, before we get to it, any other comments on or questions of Colleen? Before we get to any motion, I'd like to get public comments in, and I know Mrs. Stille would like to make a small presentation. So, Ms. Stille, if you'd like to come down.
Thank you, Mr. Doolittle and commissioners. I guess you all realize that this is a little bit unique in that 24 years ago, when we bought our property, that piece of parcel was dirt and was used in very inappropriate ways. And there's been discussion of we've never had any authorization or rules. We do have a building permit, and we had people come out and inspect the project as we built it. And I'm just curious, why isn't this ever recognized? That, I mean, this has been we've submitted this to both you and Michael a number of times, and you continue to say that we had no authorization. Do you not believe this building permit, or?
We cannot find it
Well, I have it right here, and it's building permit number 93-3465. I'm not sure if this is even important, but it just seems like there's so much negativity from the establishment on what we thought we were doing, something that was really wonderful for the community. And we have over 30 letters that support the kind of use that we've developed, recognizing it's a unique and beautiful place, and also recognizing the wonderful use that we've had over the years. And so I'd just like to spend a little time on collaborating that, if I could. You know, this started about 6-7 months ago when we received the letter from Michael, who indicated that the things we were doing in the park were restricting and causing people not to enjoy the facility. And that he suggested and actually demanded that within 60 days, we return this project to the dirt that we found it. And frankly, it was a real shock to me because nobody called or said, you know, there's concern from the neighbors, from the sound. It was like we got this letter saying vacate in 60 days and return it to what it was like. And so in that 6 months or 7 months, we've been working on trying to develop an agreement. And I recognize that sound has been an issue. On the other hand, every time that somebody is issued a warrant for an arrest, there's a fine involved in it. We have, in the 20 years that we've operated that facility, we have never had to pay a fine for loud music. We have had 2 warrants, both of which were recognizing, after I explained to the judge what we were doing. The first one, the judge said, if you don't get a complaint for a year, all charges will be dropped. And so we did that. The last complaint we had was at 8:30 in the evening. A band was kind of out of control. We went in front of the judge, recognizing that what had happened, and it was case dismissed. So when I see that in the staff report, all this concern about noise, we have been ultra sensitive about sound. In fact, my wife is so sensitive that she's had to leave on some of these events because she's so concerned that the sound will be too loud. And we have decibel meters. We go to the edge of the property. We make sure that we do not have sound over 75 decibels. And so that's kind of our issue with sound. I had a lot of other things prepared, but let's just really get down to the nitty-gritty. We don't want to have any events in Mayberry Gardens. We have our events at our property. What we would like to have is, out of 365 days, we would like to have 20 days where we can have people eat on the lawn. No ceremony, no music from the county park. We just would like to have what I call a group picnic 20 times a year. And that's really kind of the middle ground. The staff report that you requested last time indicated that you would like 4 things from the staff report. You did get the inventory, which generally I agree with. I have no problem with the inventory and your recommendation. You wanted a plan for maintenance, operation, and irrigation water supply. There's no plan. How can you sort of suggest that they're going to take it over without a plan? If I turn the water off tomorrow, within 2 weeks, the grass will be brown. I guess maybe that's all right if you're going to turn it into DG. The flowers and shrubs will be gone in a month. Then the trees will be gone in a year or two. So is the county prepared to step in now and take over the maintenance? That would be wonderful. You know, I've just put my heart and soul in creating this arboretum-like effect. And as Mr. Daniels indicated, I just wonder how the county has the resources to really maintain this park as the beautiful place that it is. And, you know, the 30 people that wrote support letters, they're all going to be looking at what happens when the county takes this over. And we're certainly going to be interested. So if your result is to have the county maintain it, then that's wonderful. As Doug mentioned, we do have events that planned. We will continue to have events. We will continue to have music. We'll just have to do it in our own property. And it'll just be a real sad thing for our community to see that facility to go downhill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stilley. We have additional comments. First, Patricia Stitzer.
Thank you. I want to move my whole letter that I wrote on April 2nd, 2018 to Deputy District Attorney Michael Large, Doreen Ertel, the Risk Management, Eric Crump, the Director of Washoe County Parks and Open Space, into the record. In the interest of brevity, I would like to read parts of that adversely affect our lives and property values by the obnoxious noise nuisance of Mr. Stilley's wedding events. But the entire letter is in the record. It's Patricia D. and Robert D. Stitzer, 6986 Aspen Glen Road, and we live in the county. It's comments on damages being done to the homeowners by the commercial wedding events on county parks land, and why this won't go away if the Parks Department gets involved. First, I would like to thank Deputy District Attorney Michael Large for his letter of September 25th, 2017, for opening up this situation for public scrutiny. My first section, problems created by the private commercial weddings on Mayberry Park land. The weddings are accompanied by two very negative factors. One, the constant amplified sound of the rants of disc jockeys and thumping drums from afternoon to late at night during most good weather weekends from spring to fall over the past decade. Two, and now the alcoholic wedding party goers driving down Aspen Glen Road past women and men with baby carriages walking between Mayberry and Rockstar Parks. These problems are not going away because there's a big money involved with these private commercial weddings. The Harris family reports that they get between $3,000 and $4,000 for each wedding. The county land The county land north of Old Mayberry Road and adjacent to the river used by Mr. Stilley is a more appealing site than the Harris property on the corner of 4th Street and Mayberry Drive. The demand is strong, and Mr. Stilley is able to book weddings months in advance. They have occurred almost every weekend from the start of good weather to the in the spring to the onset of cold weather in the fall over the past decade. When the wedding parties start, the amplifiers turn up, the DJs take over, and the drums warm up. It then becomes impossible for those of us living across the river along the Aspen Glen Road to enjoy our outdoor decks in the company of friends on a lovely summer afternoon and evenings.
Thank you, Ms. Stitzer. That's 3 minutes.
Oh, well, I was here last time, and just a minute. Mr. Stilley was presenting his side and came.
Ms. Stitzer,
No, Mr. Stilley was presenting his side last time and came to his limits of time. He was expressly given time to finish, raised his hand like this. He was expressly given time to finish his presentation.
Ms. Stitzer.
We want equal treatment.
He was given a presentation at this meeting and at the previous meeting.
I'm giving a presentation
You
soon.
have 3 minutes to do so, ma'am.
Mr. Doolittle, you have got to let us give our presentation.
I have 8 more people to
Mr.
talk,
Large,
ma'am.
what do we do about this? Because I was here last time.
Ms. Stitzer, there's a 3-minute on public comment per item. It's up to the chairman and the vice chairman's discretion on whether they want to extend time. And it's up to their discretion on to do that. But 3 minutes is the limit in regard to public comment.
If your husband will relinquish his 3 minutes to you, I'll allow that.
Yes, he will. I would give my 3 minutes. Yes.
Continue.
Okay, I want to bring up last time that Eric Crump gave his talk. They did the slideshow, but not in the slideshow it showed the sculptures, it showed everything else. The one thing it didn't show, 2 things it didn't show. It didn't show any pictures that he's got these mulch piles, et cetera, on our Mayberry Park property. This is definitely competing with other landscapers. There were no pictures of the weddings. This is competing with people that are doing wedding parties, okay? Let me go, and Collin Mansion on the corner of Mayberry and McCarran were doing weddings, and they were shut down by the neighbors that protested. We want you to put up signs like it's a Mayberry Park at the end of Woodbury. I just saw it this morning. Please bring out surveyors. Show us where the property lines are. Get all of his stuff off the property, please. Okay, I'll continue. These problems, okay, are not going to go away because of the cost. Lately, another dangerous side effect has showed up. Michael and Catherine McIntyre tried to sell their home. They sold it for $585,000. 3-bedroom, 3-bath, on the river, 250 feet of frontage. The next one that's going to come up is, okay, first we're going to monetize the damages done to these homes. Okay, we've got Aspen Glen 7090, Kelly Ray and Pamela Haberman's house. They're getting ready to sell. This noise is just insane, let me tell you. Now, there's several laws that we're going to have to follow if one of us put our homes up for sale. NRS statutory disclosure obligation forced upon neighboring home owners by Mr. Stilley's offensive wedding party noise. It's NRS 113.100 and NRS 130. Since the penalties are substantial, we will be fined if we put our home up for sale and don't tell about this egregious noise. I don't know, you've gotten me so confused. It's just absolutely horrible. What he's standing here saying is crazy. It's gone on for decades. I just wonder, answer my question, why does one person get to do this to all of us and ruin our house values, ruin our lives?
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Kelly Ray?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. For the record, Kelly Ray. I am a retired DEA agent and currently an urban infill developer here in Reno, and Reno is my hometown. I live directly across the river from the subject property that we're speaking of. I've probably been the one that's called police the most, complained the loudest, and ultimately discovered Mr. Stilley did not own the property that he has represented to own for the last 2 decades, to not only us, but every single member of the community of Reno, the city of Reno. He's been using this riverfront land for his personal business without county permission, permits, or even business licensing from the city of Reno. I know this because I investigated it. Though I appreciate and respect the fact Mr. Stilley assembled a nice package for your personal perusal at the last meeting, expanding on his good deeds, the glaring fact remains. The land Mr. Stilley has commandeered for the last 2 decades belongs to Washoe County and is in reality a public park. As I stated before, I am currently a developer in Reno with approximately 250 properties that we have developed, renovated, or adaptively reused. Although not an expert, I do feel I have a bit of knowledge with respect to building codes and permit processing. With that in mind, I would like to call your attention to some of the photos taken of the county park that Mr. Stilley has commandeered. And please note the following. And I think your parks person did point that out in your staff report. I don't need to beat the dead horse on that. The code violations and non-permitting have serious legal consequences for Washoe County, because although Mr. Stilley installed all of these items, the items are on county land, and if a child falls off that deck, which was definitely not to code, into the river, or an art sculpture falls on someone, and those art sculptures are not properly secured, I know that, because I have to adhere to code and licensing regulations in my business, Washoe County will be the entity to be sued, not Mr. Stilley. Finally, and the most blatant, disturbing, and illegal fact is that, according to Mr. Stilley's own website, in the last 20 years, and Mr. Daniel, I take exception to you saying, with all due respect, that there's nothing to show for this. Mr. Stilley, in the last 20 years, has charged between $4,600 and $13,600 per wedding event on your property, on my property, on everybody's property in this building. How much did you get back? Can I continue, please?
Couple more
Thank
seconds.
you. Per wedding, 2 times per week for 4 to 6 months out of the year for the use of his property. If you do the math on this, Mr. Stilley has personal financial gain of well over $2 million by commandeering public property. Maybe it's only $1 million. Without permission or legal authority to do so, I am asking Washoe County to put an end to the illegal use of public property for private gain.
Thank you.
Can I continue? I have
No,
1
ma'am.
minute.
We have 6 more people. I cannot continue for every person that comes up and speak.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
had 3
Doolittle.
minutes. Thank you very much. Carolyn Norman.
I do indeed thank you. Appreciate the fact that you're serving all of us. And thank you for hearing each one of us. I don't have any real formal presentation, and I won't go over 3 minutes, I know that. Please stop me if I do. We've lived, my husband and I, we're among several retirees in our neighborhood. It's a good mixture between young families and retirees, and we've lived there, be 27 years in August. And we so appreciate the fact that we're on this beautiful area with the park, that we so appreciate the parks, and walk our dogs and see our friends and enjoy it. Tom and we go back a long way because He and I were on a committee to help mitigate the sound with Cantex, which is just adjacent to where his now large enterprise is. It started off small and bucolic and quite a pleasant small nursery, plant nursery, a few chickens, a few classes. I enjoyed a yoga class there. But it's changed. It's morphed. And we've all really suffered, I think. We want what's best for everyone, too. I'm sure you do, too. And it's very hard to know what that is sometimes. But we trust that you will try to take into consideration those of us who this is our permanent home. And we really would like to be able to enjoy even watching television without our walls shaking. Sometimes it feels like that. Even though we're kind of losing our hearing, we still really, really are suffering because of it. And thank you. I just hope there is something you can do. I don't know exactly what the scope of your committee is, but hopefully it will touch on some of the concerns that we have. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Norman. Before the next person comes up, Robert Norman, next. I will state to Ms. Ray and others, item 13 is open public comment. If you feel you don't have enough time, you can add some more comments there.
I'm Robert Norman, the other half of Carol Norman. And one of the things that she did not mention is the disruption on our street. There's a footbridge across the river from our house to River School. And our immediate neighbor across the street from us sold their house, and it's now an Airbnb. And that has created another major problem for us in that it's for rent for all of these weddings. One night I counted 17 cars parked across the street from us, and there's no parking on Aspen Glen for a reason. In order to access fire trucks and emergency vehicles, there needs to be a turnaround. There is not room to bring a fire truck down the street. If some emergency happened on the evening that there was a wedding there, the emergency vehicles would not be able to get there. In addition to that, in my front driveway, there are frequently dozens of people wandering around in the driveway and across the footbridge. And at one point, there was a young individual that died from alcohol poisoning across the street from us. Recently in the paper, there was another incident similar, and I understand that that was closed down. There is a lot of people over there. It's not a small event. And if you lived there, you would not be looking for a compromise. I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norman. Next, Paige Stevenson.
I have a lot of trouble talking in public, so sorry. I wasn't going to speak, but I wanted to ask, or I wanted to state that I live on Aspen Glen, by the way. My name is Paige Stevenson, and Mr. Stilley stated he would continue to have weddings, but the weddings would not be the same because because he has access to this property, right? I'm sorry.
Take your
So,
time.
I am not asking for anything that anyone else in the county has, or doesn't have, or whatever. I'm saying, make him follow the rules of everyone else in the county. Why is it different? So, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Did well. Pamela Haberman? Hopefully I pronounced that right.
Hi, Pamela Haberman. I live at 7090 Aspen Glen, which is just across the bridge. The issue, I believe, is not so much what Mr. Stilley is doing. He can use his property however he sees fit. It's the county land that we're concerned about that he's using illegally, and the ramifications of that for the neighborhood. We feel that, first of all, the park is not adequate for the uses that he's using it with. It's small. There's 100 to 150 people there on a weekend, and there's not adequate parking. It's dangerous. The bridge is dangerous. The deck is dangerous. And we feel that he should have to follow the rules that everybody else follows. They're posted on the park. No amplified music, sun up to sundown, and use it with permits. He's not doing any of that. So, and then the common ground, Mr. Daniel, if he's using the park every weekend of the summer, it's all his ground. We're not getting any of the ground, nor is anyone else. It's all Mr. Stilley using the park. We have trucks showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's set up, and it's that way till 10 o'clock at night. No one can use the park when he's using it. It's completely commandeered. Now, if you allow if you go with option 1, where he has to follow the rules, I would submit that I will go down and reserve the park every single weekend, just so I don't have to listen to the music and the noise and have the intrusion in our home. I can feel the floor move in my house. I can feel the thump thump. I can't sleep. It's not right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other public comments on this item. I want to thank everybody that did come up to speak. I appreciate very much your comments. I also want to thank Mr. Stilley. You've been very active in parks over the last 40, 50 years in this valley, and I appreciate that very much, regardless of how this goes. Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission. Is there a motion to be made?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I move to recommend staff perform preliminary property research to determine if the property can be deemed surplus and bring a report back to the Open Space and Regional Parks Commission for possible recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
I would second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Comments? Commissioner?
I guess I just want to say that I do appreciate everybody's work on this issue. It's a very difficult issue. I think what the Stilleys have done with the property is beautiful and certainly an improvement over the bare land that it was before. At the same time, I can recognize the concerns of adjacent property owners and also the county with respect to liability and costs of having to ensure that the property is safe and then figure out how to maintain it, particularly in light of the fact that there's limited funding for parks and a lot of different competing interests in this parcel was not part of the master plan for the park system. So it's a very challenging issue, and I just appreciate everybody's input on that.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Solero, if this is deemed a surplus property, does this go into the general fund, a sale?
For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. That would be at the direction of the Board of County Commissioners. You know, part of the research of the process will be, you know, what paid for this portion. If it was paid for out of residential construction tax, you know, we'll have to ferret that out to determine the location where the funding would then be placed within the Washoe County budget. There are a lot of different options. There are a lot of different ways to do land sales within Nevada revised statutes. Each one of those come with a determination. I'm thinking of an asset we recently sold. The way it was sold to a different governmental entity required that the funds be spent on capital. So we'll have to work through that.
Thank you. Commissioner Daniel?
In general, I'm against selling any county property, anything that the parks own, especially a piece of property that's adjacent to the river, for multiple reasons. One being, the county owns it. I think they should own it in perpetuity. Who knows what'll happen to that property in the future, but it is a nice piece of land, and I'd hate to see somebody develop it. I know it's in the floodplain. I understand that there's issues with that, but the last thing I'd want to see on that nice piece of open space is, you know, a 6th-floor apartment building and blocking access to the river. It'd be great for a developer, but it's not good for the people. So, you know, I'm not in favor of selling this property.
My comments are very similar in the sense that I think the public does benefit from that property. It's river access. It's right across the bridge from a trail that's used quite a bit. I'd hate to see the property be sold and be utilized in a fashion that doesn't take care of the problem that exists. Because when it goes in public auction, anybody can purchase that property. It's not just a desire to sell to the Stillies or to any of you out in the audience. It would be open public auction, and not knowing what that would bring forth in terms of use. I do have a concern with that. I'm like Commissioner Daniel. I feel we have an awful hard time gaining public property, park property, and preserving it for the betterment of the people in the community. So I'm not in favor of this particular proposal, but we can go forward from there. Any other comments?
And so there's not, at this time, from the Parks Department, a concrete plan as to what would be done with the property if it were retained, or what the costs of maintaining it might be?
For the record, Colleen Wallace Barnum, Parks Operations Superintendent. At this time, no. There is no idea of cost associated with that. We could certainly come forward with that in the future, but at this time, no.
And also at this time, we're not sure what the proceeds from a potential sale, what would be done with that either, right?
Yeah.
For the record, Dave Solero, until we do the full research and really understand how it was actually, what funds purchased the property, we won't be able to provide that information.
Any other comments before I call the question? Yes, Commissioner.
I made the motion for a couple reasons. One, I'm very familiar with the flood improvements. This property, a portion of it, if that rate passes, a portion of this property will be going away. It's a bottleneck within the river, so there is planned improvements on there. And because the flood commission is basically owned by the county, this property would probably have to be bought by the county. So, born and raised here, there's a lot of handshakes and a lot of deals been done by handshakes, but unfortunately it's the way of the world. You have to have the right permits. It has to be your property. The liability, you can't put that kind of liability on the county. It's just not a safe practice of, what we're up here for. We're trying to keep the people safe, and I just don't think that letting him operate it the way he has been and having the county come in and help out seems very logical to me. So that's why I made the motion.
And I would reiterate what I said earlier about being consistent with park use. That's my key. If we were to retain the property, I would want to be consistent, but we're speaking about the selling of the property and the motion on the table, so any other comments?
For the commissioners who have voiced some disapproval of the sale, would you envision the property just reverting back to the state that it was prior to the installation of Mayberry Gardens, or what are your thoughts on that possible scenario?
I feel the staff is very well educated and has the great knowledge to manage it the way they need to manage it, if it should be retained by the county.
And I see two options. One, Stilly's continue to operate and maintain the facility, and there's some new agreement that does enshrine this in as an agreement, which I continue to believe was the intent of staff 20 years ago. Or the county will maintain it or not, but it will stay county property, which is the most important thing, because even if it turns back into a weed pit, which is likely what will happen if the Stillies aren't maintaining it, just because of the fact that the county's operating on half the budget it used to have, and there's no way they're going to be able to maintain this new property. At least the property in this fantastic spot stays property, it remains with the public. That's the most important thing, I think.
Mr. Lart, did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. No other comments? I'll call for the motion. All in favor?
Do we have a second?
Huh?
Do we have a second on the surplus?
Yes, we had a
market?
second.
Sorry.
We had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
No.
What was your vote?
Sorry. Nay.
Nay. Motion failed. Is there another motion to be made?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Good luck with this one. All right. I move to recommend staff proceed to develop a partnership with Mr. and Mrs. Stilley, who will continue to maintain and irrigate the landscape, maintain liability insurance and other necessary safeguards to protect the county, and allow the Stilleys to hold events between May and October until 9:00 p.m. and county staff install signage consistent with Wassaw County standards when time and funds permit.
Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of second. Is there another motion? Can I make a motion?
Yes, you can, Mr. Vice Chairman.
No, he's Mr. Chair. The signs are wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, besides.
Go
They
ahead.
did that so I can make a motion. No. All right. I move to recommend to park staff that Washington County parcel 039222021 be operated and managed similar to other parks within Washington County Park System. Weddings and social functions would not be permitted by Washington County. Other requests for use from Mr. and Mrs. Stilley or others would be handled on a case-by-case basis through the existing park permitting system. Washington County would further evaluate the cost benefit of the parcel related to maintenance costs and public benefit to determine if Washington County should maintain the property as is or make changes.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that motion?
I guess this is Chris Nenzel for the record. I guess my concern is that whether or not Washoe County Parks has the staff on hand to enforce the regulations of that park. Because if they don't, then setting these rules for Mr. Stilley to follow is just setting rules. If there's no enforcement, then it doesn't solve the problems that the neighbors are complaining about. And that was the reason I seconded the first motion that we talked about.
If I can make a comment. With all due
Commissioner
respect to the neighbors and the sound issues that you all face, that's not my concern. My concern is what happens to the parcel. So I know you have issues with loud thumping music, and I completely sympathize with that and think it's probably, and what it is, it's inappropriate, and that's too bad. But what I care about is that park be maintained. It's in great shape right now. It looks like a park. The agreement, I think, was a tacit understanding, and that's where we are. So,
Any other comments? Okay, I call for the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
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 Motion failed. We can continue, or we can take this back to staff and try to figure out this different solution. Mr. District Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, what I would recommend if we're at an impasse is that we can table this until the next meeting and bring back a staff report that addresses some of the concerns in regard to the cost to maintain the park, and discussion in regard to that. If you guys want to enunciate exactly what, and I'll go back and review the record, but in terms of what the staff should look into in terms of code enforcement on the parcel, making sure there's some clarity in regard to who handles any kind of noise issues. Perhaps do a survey of the parcel itself to make sure we know where the lines are, and what can be done in that regard.
I would agree with that. Are you clear on what we're asking?
For the record, Colleen Wallace Barnum, yes, I am clear on that. And then in addition, Commissioner Gwynn, you also wanted us to look into the flood management history and/or future use of that property.
There is an actual master plan.
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so I'll make sure we bring, so let me reiterate, we're going to bring information on code enforcement, on flood management, on cost associated with maintaining the parcel, water connection, and was there an additional? Noise was kind of associated with the cost,
Yeah.
the
well,
code enforcement?
We can work together on the code enforcement.
Okay, okay.
All right. Is everybody clear on?
Yeah, could I just add, if staff feels that due diligence has been done on I think, I keep going back to this prior intent, but I think it's important. I really feel that intention was there, it was never enshrined, and that's too bad. But I don't know if that document, the permit that Mr. Stilley has, it's got a stamp from the county with a permit number. If you guys have done due diligence and you've gone to the records and you can't find it, then I get it. But I mean, it might be worth going down and seeing if you can pull it one more time, just because it might show that there was that intent. Because right now, I feel like that was not being taken into account at all, because, we're looking at it very black and white, and I think this is a more nuanced.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I know that there was a grading permit and a subsequent use permit for a demonstration garden that was put into place in 1994. We can have that as part of the next passage. My understanding was that permit was pulled and never finalized. So I believe that clarification needs to be made in that regard as well. We can put that in the staff report as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody, for commenting, and Mr. Stilley, thank you. Next item. Next item is Program Park of the Month, Cyclocross, Reno Cross update. Go ahead.
For the record, my name is Brian Harrower. I'm the district park manager working out of Rancho Santa Fe. I wanted to do a presentation about the recent cyclocross event that we had at the park and our partnership with USA Cycling. Okay, should go back to the first slide, please? Okay, so this event was held in January. The actual event ran from January 29th through Sunday, January 14th. This preparation for this event started over a year from the beginning of this event. We worked very closely with USA Cycling to be able to bring this event here and also make sure that it was something that would be a benefit to the parks and the community. So we did meet on site with the event organizers prior to the event and set the parameters and discuss the possible park impacts. In doing that, we walked the potential course layouts and discussed the challenges that we may face within the park and also some of the challenges that will come up in dealing with the local community that does use the park frequently. We were in constant communications with the local setup team and event organizers. They were local people that had a real stake in this event and wanted to make sure that it would go off very well. And then we established a protocol for priorities for post-event remediation. So this was something that we did talk a lot about the possible impacts of this event to the park and the local community. And in doing so, we took a lot of thought in how this would impact our user groups, because we have very passionate people that love to use Rancho San Rafael and are very concerned about how we're looking after this park. So we had to take all of that into account when we were moving forward. So throughout the event, we had a completely open communication. Everyone had everybody's cell phone number. We were on the ground regularly. We had a very, very clear line of communication. And if there were any concerns that were voiced during this event, it was very, very quick for us to be able to respond. We did work with the event staff to troubleshoot any issues that arose during the event. We coordinated with USA Cycling staff to facilitate after-hours course repairs and ensure facility security. So we did have a lot of stuff that needed to be done after the races, and so we were able to coordinate with the staff to provide the opportunity and the access to get to some of the park that could be worked on during the off hours of the event. And so as soon as the event started back up, it was ready to go for everyone. And then we did provide staff to assist with safety issues and any other concerns that may have affected the park during the event. And to do that, we wanted to get a good feel of how this event ran. So our staff was out walking through the event, talking to organizers, talking to people that were involved with the event, just talking to the general public to get a real feel of how an event of this magnitude would impact the park, because it was a new one for us. So the event was very successful. Part of the success of that event was that we had perfect weather that contributed to a lot of people coming out. This was not ideal for the riders. The riders actually want it to be rather nasty, muddy, and challenging. So there was a little bit of a letdown on their part, but I can tell you from the spectators and the public point of view, it could not have been better. It was a beautiful weekend. There was a lot of people out there. They were definitely enjoying the beer tents. So it was a lot of fun, and I think it came out to be a very good event. We did have more than 50 local riders that did participate, which was great to have a local representation. And then there was 1,400 to 1,500 riders that came in for this event. So this was a national championship, and this was a very big deal to be able to have this quality of riders here participating in the event here in Washoe County. And throughout the course of that week, we had 36 new national champions crowned at this event. So it was a very big deal and something that we were very proud to host at Rancho San Rafael. So for the last day, there was over 5,000 spectators. It was a really busy day. It was kind of nice for us, though, because it started off small. The events that were leading up were not as highly, there wasn't as many spectators for those ones. So we were able to get a feel for how this event was going, build towards that final day. And when that day came, we had enough experience in troubleshooting that we were able to handle that and provide a really good outlook for the people that did come out to enjoy that event. We did get very positive feedback from the racers. They all loved the course. They thought it was a great place to come view it. It was a 2-mile course, and most of it was very, very spectator friendly. So people were able to get right up next to the riders and see something that we don't get to see here very often. It's a very popular event in other parts of the world, but I can tell you there was a lot of people that had no idea what this event entailed, and afterwards, after the week of it, they said that was a lot of fun, really proud that we could represent something like that here in the Washoe County area. And we also had lots of park visitors that turned into spectators. They came through and there was a lot of concern initially. How is this going to impact the park? They saw the big crates coming in, they saw the stakes going in, and there was a large concern of how is this going to look after they leave? And I can tell you that having the local contingent made a huge difference for us because they really wanted to leave everything in as good a condition as they possibly could because they live here and also they wanted to be able to be invited back. So after the event was over, we did decommission some of the more sensitive areas immediately after. It was the same day, and we already had crews out decommissioning these trails. There would have been some of our local riders that would have liked to have a chance to go out and ride this course, but we were trying to lessen the impacts as much as we could. So we started the decommissioning and breakdown of the event as soon as we possibly could, and that was mostly on USA Cycling. They did a great job with that. They used wattles and straw to prevent erosion because that was one of our primary concerns with some of the hillside. They did have a lot of activity on an area that we were hoping was not going to then increase the erosion in that area. So when they were creating this, there was a lot of dead material that was removed, but we actually just pulled it to the side, and then after the course was decommissioned, used that to discourage additional use in those areas. And then we did spread a native seed mix over the area, so what was predominantly just cheatgrass was now replaced with some native material. And then we continue to monitor that with the USA Cycling staff, who's still coming out to check on the course rehab to this day. So just a couple of the before and after site shots. So this was the off-camber section. This was probably one of the largest concerns from some of the public was, how is this area going to look once they're done? Is it going to be a big new trail that's going to continue to have impact? As you can see, there was a lot of the vegetation, the large vegetation was still there. The smaller vegetation was removed, but a lot of that would have been a fire hazard, and it was not desirable species anyways. So in the end, it actually is probably a healthier environmental area than it was before we went in and put this course in that location. So here's another shot of just downhill from that off-camber area. This was probably the heaviest used area of course. There was an S-curve that came into here, and there was a lot of good crashes and a lot of fun stuff for people to watch. So this area was covered with people the entire time, and as you can see, afterwards, there was a really strong effort to make sure that this area was not impacted. And this was after a very heavy rainstorm that we had in March, and you can see that the ground is still there. We're not losing a lot of it to erosion, and we do have beneficial species coming in that area as well. So this one is right below that section. This is basically where they would run out. They had a lot of speed, again, a lot of spectators, a lot of fast bikes, a lot of impact in this area. And right afterwards, this was one of the first areas that they decompacted and regraded the area. So you can see that it looks probably, again, better than it did before the event. And then we were able to top seed with a native seed mixture, which was really beneficial. So there was a lot of other impacts to the park that were, and to the community that were positive. We have a lot of bike riders that come through Rancho Santa Fe, and we have an extensive trail system right outside of Rancho Santa Fe up on the Peavine Mountain. And so it was really good for us to be able to foster some of those relationships and to grow those partnerships that we have. And then there was economic impacts to the region. An estimated $4 million came in to the region because of this event, so definitely had a positive impact. It did show that this was a great place to live. Washoe County, we've been touting the fact that it is an outdoor destination, and this did nothing but reinforce that. And it did it globally. As I said, this is something that isn't always popular, as popular locally. This is something that in Europe is a huge deal. And so we had people from across the world that were watching these races very intently, and they heard about Washoe County, they heard about Rancho Santa Fe, and they heard about our park system, which is all positives for us. So in the end, it was a great partnership for an event of this size and this, what we thought was going to be a huge challenge. It came out really well. Couldn't be happier with our partners that we had, and I hope that we can pull together some really nice events like this in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and a great job by you and everybody else out there. It was a marvelous event. I've heard from many people in bike shops and other places that really were thrilled that this event occurred at Rancho Santa Fe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the chairman's comments. It's great that we were able to bring this to the Reno area, and I hope that we can do so again and again and again over the years to come.
Absolutely.
Commissioner?
So could you remind me what the county, was this a permitted thing and then did they pay, or was this a co-sponsored event?
We were a co-sponsor. We were featured prominently on many barricades throughout the park. We did make sure that we were mentioned in literature, and we did have a prominent place as far as sponsors of this event.
Okay, and do you know if cyclocross is for-profit or nonprofit?
It's a nonprofit, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then do you feel like I mean, you had a lot of pictures of the rehab, which is great, and that's important. You know, what I've seen since the races, there's still like some scarring and things that, you know, where the course was. Do you think that they're going to continue to work any longer this year to rehab? Like, because you keep saying we did this, we top seeded it. Does that mean the Rangers were doing it and then your seasonal staff?
It was definitely a partnership. We have had some of the local staff has come back. They've provided us with the seed mixture, did help spread some of it. A lot of the decommissioning up on that off-camber section was done specifically by USA Cycling, so they did take care of that under our supervision. So it has been a true partnership. So yeah, I think that it was something that definitely they were working on, and will continue to come back. The turf itself, that was actually our staff who does the turf maintenance up at Rancho Santa Fe is very well versed at bringing stuff back from our large events such as the balloon races, and they wanted to take the opportunity to be able to do that. So they provided us the seed and the top dressing soil to be able to do those fixes, and it's probably about 90% finished at this point. You can see a small indent where you had the heaviest racing, but if you didn't really know that it was there and weren't looking for it, it would not be very obvious, and I can assure you probably within the next month you won't even be able to tell that it was there.
Great. Well, that's fantastic. So you feel satisfied?
I do, yes, definitely.
Great.
Any other comments? Yes.
I just wanted to say that was an excellent presentation and a really cool event that I'm glad we were able to have here in Washoe County. Has USA Cycling expressed any interest in coming back for a future national?
With the feedback from that event, I'm sure that they would like to do one, yes. They've definitely voiced the hope that they could do it, but there is a cycle that they have to go through. Being a national championship, it does move around quite a bit. So there's no firm plan of when it will come back, but I know that they will consider us as a venue in the future.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10, Parks reports. Park District reports.
For the record, Colleen Wallace Barnum, Parks Operations Superintendent. So you all got the park report in your packet. Just wanted to make sure you knew that the report for the May Arboretum was 2 months worth of reports, so there's quite a bit of information in there. There is a current exhibit if you haven't been out to the Arboretum. Vanishing Trees is a traveling exhibit. It was free to the county, and it's actually really neat. It's interpretive panels spread throughout the Arboretum. If you haven't had time, please take a look at that. The rest of the report, I'm not sure if there's too many other highlights. We're bringing on seasonal staff, getting the water on, getting grass and things fertilized, and greening everything up for our operating season. So looking forward to a good year. Any questions?
No questions for me. Anybody else? Questions?
I know, Commissioner Gwen, you had requested the Parks Capital Fund balances, which are in the report. So, both of our park planners are here if you had any specific questions for them regarding that.
No, thank you, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Item 11, Director's Report. I assumed you were given the whole report, Colleen. That's okay. That's good.
Good afternoon. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. Just a couple of highlights for you, actions by the Board of County Commissioners. So April 10th, they took the recommendation of staff and this board to have us include smoke-free, vape-free parks into Chapter 95. We also accepted some cash donations at April 17th for cash and in-kind value, roughly, $9,268 in cash and $42,707 in in-kind donations to the regional park system. Then on April 24th, most recently, the board awarded 3 bids for flood damage restoration projects to our parks. So Dennis and Cheryl were instrumental in getting those projects put together, and so those projects will be moving forward so we can finally take care of some of that flood damage from February of 2017, and then request reimbursement from FEMA on those projects. Additionally, I wanted to talk a little bit about budget. County Manager John Slaughter presented his recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners related to budget last Tuesday. I believe it was last Tuesday. Just wanted to highlight a couple of things. And so out of roughly 300 and, because I don't have that information here, $350 million general fund budget. County Manager Slaughter is recommending an above base of only $90,000. So again, that kind of ongoing piece of not having funds. However, staff was successful in creating some funds specific to parks. I wanted to bring that back for your benefit. So some of the things by taking a look at traditional reservation fees, we're actually going to capitalize on some increased revenue that has actually occurred. We were able to show over the last 5-year period that we had an increase in revenue, so then we were able to capitalize on that increase in revenue in this budget cycle to increase, again, some of our seasonal fees, so $64,000 additional for seasonal employees. So hopefully that'll really show a boost in some of those operational needs out there. Again, this starts July 1st. We also increased some fees associated with the fee schedule that you all approved, and this was to help us cover the cost of credit card fees as well as some of the security in our event. So that was really no increase to general fund or park funds. And then the other thing is we are taking $110,000 to purchase medium equipment. So that's some of those ongoing things, some of the smaller mowers, some of the gators, some of the things that the park maintenance staff utilize out in the field that we don't necessarily budget for. So we're able to take some of that increase in fees and put it towards that. So those are some one-time effects, at least the maintenance or the medium equipment, but those will benefit our park system this summer. So. The other, we actually were successful as well in creating a .75 maintenance worker 2 position to maintain the new ball fields up at North Valley's Regional Park. So just wanted to give you some good news about budget, even though the outlook is guarded. So with that, if you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Oh.
Okay, so I guess this would be part of park reports. We'll go backwards. Just wanted to highlight Cheryl Surface is our natural resource planner, and she is retiring. Monday, May 7th is going to be her last day, so this is her last park commission. And I just wanted to make sure we were recognizing how amazing of a job she's done. She did get her 10-year pin in February, and we will miss dearly. So she's done a lot of great work for us. So thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl. You've done a terrific job throughout your time here, and you will be missed. I know a staff of 2 now is 1, but thank you for all the hard work.
I would echo that as well. You do a fantastic job, and it's all on Dennis now. So.
All right, commissioners' comments. None? None? None, other than you're all doing a great job. Thank you very much for everything you do. And I mean that sincerely, even though it sounded like my cold was drowning the sincerity out of it. We'll go on to public comments. Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I am the United States President. I just wanted to let you know that the fiduciary is out of business, and they were having us, they were handing us checks so that we could spend these checks. But yesterday, when I went to the bank, they did say that this company is out of business. They have not been in business at all, and they are warning me that I may not get my $30 check because I've been noticing that they have been piling up these fiduciary checks on the desk at the bank, and they are not planning to cash them or use them at all because they are not in business. And they also noticed that fiduciary has been stealing all my money from all my bank accounts, and right now they are showing zero. So it's not, there's no funds in my accounts because of this reason. And I am homeless as of today. And I just wanted to let you know, stealing somebody else's money, you will be charged embezzlement because the money does not belong to you. If your name is not on the check, don't spend it because it's not your money. And so I just wanted to, bring this up because this is a real crucial problem to many, many people because I'm a renter on C Street in Sparks, so I did need that money, to continue to pay my rent. But if that's not going to be available, then my rent cannot be paid either. Also, I just wanted to let you know, I was in the Sky Mountain area, and I was, trying to get back home to my house, but unfortunately, there has been a lot of complaints that somebody's been breaking in. And not only that, there were flags put up in the back porch, and they don't have the right to put anything on that house at all because they don't live there. They are the squatters, and also they are on death row.
Thank you, Ms. Brandhorst. Last item, adjournment. We're adjourned.